Yes, welcome back to the SA Sports Show. Time to talk a little bit of tennis, and we're really lucky enough. We're down here at the beautiful Goodwood Tennis Club, opposite the Goodwood Oval here, and lucky enough to be joined by arguably probably the most sought-after coach in world tennis, Darren Cahill.
Thank you.
Mate, I'm fantastic. Great. Thanks very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Now, you're a member of well, famous, I suppose. Well, you are famous. Sporting family here in South Australia, and we've got quite a few great sporting families in South Australia. But obviously, Dad John, a legend at the football club at Port Adelaide, with I think 10 flags or whatever, and whatever, 3 as a player, all that sort of thing. Uncle Darrell, great footballer,
golfer,
even better golfer, I would think.
Exactly.
A fantastic player. Tell us your story, mate. Growing up, you would have seen a lot of this. You would have seen a lot of the Dad's work and your uncle's work.
I've spent 53 years trying to jump out of their shadows. Hasn't worked too well when I come back to Adelaide, but I've been away for a long time now, so Port Adelaide guy through and through up until about the age of 16. My dad's a bit of a closet tennis player and loves the sport, so I got into tennis a bit because of him and played Aussie rules and tennis up until about the age of 16. Didn't like getting hit too much on the footy field, a little bit soft, the old man would call me, so I moved a little more towards tennis at that age, and then started to get picked up for a couple of national teams and just ended up playing tennis as a career.
Now, you say were you a big kid?
No.
So that was the issue with the Aussie rules?
Yeah, so I was 16, smallest kid in my class at St Michael's.
About pressure.
Yeah, about 5'2" back then, so I was tiny actually. And then after about 18 months, I grew about a foot. I'm 6'2" now, and so I had a lot of knee problems early in my teenage years, and ended up having about 13 knee operations until about the age of 25.
Wow. Okay.
And I had all sorts of problems with the tracking of the kneecaps, and so my tennis career got cut short by about the age of 25. I was a bit late getting into the game as well, but I worked incredibly hard. I kind of had this football mentality playing tennis and loved the team environment, loved working hard, got the opportunity also to work with a lot of people that worked at Port Adelaide and also Collingwood. My old man went across there for a couple of years in 83 and 84 and ended up doing a lot of training with the physical guy, Ray Giles at Collingwood. So he was part of the reason why I became strong enough and fast enough to be able to play decent tennis, and from there it made a bit of a career out of it.
Bulldog, that's what they called you, Bulldog. Well, really, I thought about when I knew I was going to talk to you today about a little bit of Leighton Hewitt. You had that, you were just a Bulldog, you were not going to give up. That the way you played? Because Leighton was very much the same. Yeah,
well, Leighton was much more talented than I was, but I did get, I think, the most out of what I had. Being late to the game, you kind of had to be... The biggest difference in my career was you need one person to really believe in you. And that one person for me was a guy from Victoria called Bob Carmichael. And my big chance came at the Australian Institute of Sport around about 1983. I wasn't good enough to be the top 10 Aussie juniors to be invited to go and live in Canberra. But I had this one guy, Bob Carmichael, who really believed in me and loved me. And the guy that was running it in Canberra was a guy called Ray Ruffles, former Davis Cup player for Australia. And Bob said, I want to put this young South Australian guy in there. And the other 9 players in the Institute of Sport, I hadn't even beaten any of them, not once. And he said he sees something in me and he thinks I'm a hard worker and a great work ethic, and there's something about this kid that I really like. And Ray said, absolutely no chance, this kid can't play, he's never going to be a tennis player. But everybody needs someone that believes in them to give them a leg up. And Bob did, and Bob pushed and pushed and pushed. He got me in the squad. I went to Canberra, I trained for a couple of years, and as it turned out, every single player in Canberra at the Institute of Sport when I was there, as soon as I beat them once, I never lost to them again, and ended up having a great career because of Bob. And Bob ended up being my coach right from junior years all the way through to the end of my career.
You're the same coach, very rare.
Yeah, very rare in tennis. We have, I guess it's like an AFL football coaching job. You never quite know if you're going to be employed tomorrow, and you can't look too far ahead in the future. But I've also been pretty lucky that I've had some good players to coach.
Did you send Ray a little message when you made the semi-final, US Open?
No, look, Ray and I are good friends, and we play a lot of golf together, and it's a bit of a funny story for us as well. And unfortunately for us, Bob was one of Ray's best mates, and Bob passed away about 7 or 8 years ago. So that was a bit devastating for the Australian tennis fraternity, and he not only impacted my life, but he impacted a lot of other tennis players' lives as well. He was Pat Rafter's early coach as well, so he was an amazing coach. And most of the philosophies that Bob had coaching me, I have in with the players that I coach today.
Okay. So at 25, that's it for you as far as competitive tennis goes. What were you thinking? Where do you go? Where do I go from here? Because that's very young to be finished playing the sport you love. And obviously you had to, but was there a gap there? Was there a, whoa, what do I do now type moment?
Yeah, I spent about 3 years trying to rehabilitate to get back into the game. Obviously, it was a long time. I did come back for about 6 months and played a little bit, but it was more for the heart than anything else, just to feel it again. And then after that, you knew that the game had gone past you, and I had a few more knee problems after that as well, and so enough was enough. And I came back, and I was hitting with a bunch of kids back here in South Australia. I could still play socially, so no problem as far as coaching. I had a knock on my front door. In fact, a phone call from a lady called Sherilyn Hewitt and said, I've got a little fella about 12 years of age that you might want to take a look at, and we'd love for you to hit a few balls with him. And so I did. He knocked on my front door. He had the hat backwards like this. He had the racket bag over his shoulders. He had about 12 rackets there. He had the long Agassi shorts, the Nike gear on. He was a freak. And so I went out in the back and I played with him. We played a couple of sets straight away. All he did was wanted to play. And I know after the first 2 sets, I beat him pretty easily, but you could see that he was a good player. And then in the third set, I started to struggle. And I knew that, oh my God, and this kid was getting pumped up and giving the fist pumps and the come-ons at 12 years of age and getting into it. He didn't even know me. It was the first time we'd ever met. And after the practice session, I went for a couple of hours. I came in and my girlfriend then, who is my wife now, Victoria, she said, what do you think of that kid? I said, oh my God, this kid is going to be something special.
Wow,
Not only does he have great shot selection, his stroke production is great, he moves incredibly well, but I've never seen a young fella fight like he fights for every point. And that was what the staple of Leighton Hewitt. That's what made him, that's what everybody knew him for, is what he gave everything that he had throughout his whole career. He was polarizing. People loved him or hated him, but I think as you got to know him over the course of his career, you really respected the way that he gave everything he had for Davis Cup and playing for Australia and got the most out of his career. He's a little legend. He's great.
Interesting you say that, because that's a Cahill trait. Never give up. You would have seen that in him straight away. Like, bang.
He has a football background as well.
Exactly right, but he's a bulldog. He's just not going to. He's going to keep nipping at your heels.
He would have been good in the Port Adelaide jumper, Rusty. Right, and he had a dream to play football as well. And there was a little period in his career, I wasn't with him at that stage, but I think Roger Rashid was coaching him. And there was a little period in his career where he actually thought about giving the game away and having a crack at Aussie rules. Seriously. And so that would have been interesting because he didn't mind getting, not like me, I was a little bit soft. He didn't mind getting whacked around a little bit. And so he had the speed, he had the skills, he had beautiful hands, he had a great read of the game. The same way he reads tennis, he read football. So I actually think he might have had a go at it. There's other tennis players that did that. Todd Viney. Todd Viney was one of the best players in Australia. Gave up when he was 18, 19, flew back to Australia, came back and ended up being the captain of the Melbourne Football Club and having an amazing career.
Amazing, isn't it? How guys can do that. Code jump well. We saw Usain Bolt, of course, in the news a little bit.
That was a bit of a disaster.
Well, of course it was, and it was never going to work. So Leighton was your first coaching gig?
Correct.
He was your first man.
Correct.
Was he easy to coach? Because you said earlier that he was polarising. The public sort of didn't quite know. They loved him, but others were all a little bit funny with him. Did you see that? Did you see that as a coach?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you're that young, if you're not making mistakes, you're not living, you're not learning, and you're not getting the most out of yourself. And he would say that. He would say, listen, I didn't do everything right, but what I did it from the heart. And I did it because I believed in it, and I did it because of the bigger cause, is I was trying to get the best out of myself. Yeah, he was challenging for sure, but not in a coaching sense, because as far as the tennis was concerned, he was a sponge. And he would take in every bit of information you could give him. He'd go on the court, and 9 times out of 10, he would execute and get the job done. But because he expected so much out of himself, when the frustration would set in, he would take it out on those around him. So that was the more challenging part of it. You see that a lot today. Back then, it was a little more rare than what you see it now. But for sure, that was the challenging side of things. But those years working with him, South Australian kid doing what he did, youngest ever world #1, being a part of that.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I have incredibly great memories for that. And his win at the US Open when he came through. The year before, he actually won the doubles at the US Open with Max Marini. And then he comes through and in 2001, wins the US Open, and then after that goes on and wins the World Championships in Sydney, the Final 8 tournament, becomes the world #1. And that was a special moment for him and I. It was amazing.
Mate, I can't let you go. That's all we've got time for this segment. But we're going to get. I must continue this, folks. Don't go away because the second part of this will be on. We're going to take a break now, but we'll come back with more in a moment.